Hello, welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm actually going to go through the edit in Lightroom that I'm going to perform on the 5 images that people kindly sent in as a result of my video yesterday asking for submissions. Let's see what happens. This image is a sunset sent in by Constan. It was taken with a Nikon D850 and it's of a sunset over the Outer Banks, North Carolina. So I started this image by basically setting the balance of the colours up by using the auto facility. I've then decided to put a graduated filter on the upper part of the image and warmed it up a bit, and also taken the clarity down to break up the picture a little bit more. And the next thing I'm doing is putting an inverse graduated filter on the bottom, where I'm actually warming up the whole of the image and brightening it up slightly. Making sure that the histogram actually stays within the right area. I'm removing any noise because the image isn't perfectly crisp and sharp, and now I've applied a small vignette to the image. I'm now editing it down and cropping it because there's too much clutter on the left hand side, and I've noticed that there are some lens flares on there. I'm just adjusting the light level slightly to make a better appearance of it. Now I'm going to clone out those lens flares as best I can. So we're moving the source point around a little bit there to make it a little less obvious it's been cloned. There's another one just there which I'm going to get rid of, so that's gone, and now I'm just going to tidy up around the edges of the first bit of flare because I haven't quite done it properly. It's starting to look a lot better, but the area that I've actually now created where the recloned sunspot's gone, it looks a little bit light, so I'm going to take the light level down on that by just picking up a brush and reducing the light level on that, darkening it very slightly just to make it a little less obvious. It doesn't stand out and poke you in the eye, and that's pretty much the image done. So enjoy the image, it's coming up next. Gill sent in this picture while he was canoeing on a trip through one of the national parks in America. It's a nice forest scene, so let's see what we make from it. Okay, I don't like the crop on this. I think there's too much either side that actually is spoiling the main interest of the picture, which are the 2 main trees. So I'm cropping in quite heavily to actually take that information away, and I'm setting the auto white balance, sorry, not auto white balance, auto levels, and adjusting them. I'm putting a small vignette on it because it ties the eye into the center, and I'm warming the image up very slightly. I'm now applying a graduated filter which I'm going to warm up the lower half of the image very slightly, and I'm going to put a graduated filter on the top half and cool it down very slightly to emphasize the fog. And I've also brought the highlights down a bit so that we can see. There's also a little bit at the top there which has got the sky in it, so I've just cropped that out of the frame and just altered the framing very slightly so that the eye isn't drawn out of the picture. I'm now going to actually just bring a little bit more sort of brightness into the branches and some of the darker areas. It's only very subtle, you might not even be able to see it on YouTube, but that's the intention of doing that. Just slightly increase the brightness of those parts. It just makes it stand out a little bit more, and up the contrast as well. So here's the final image. This is another image sent in by Gill. It's a tree in the fog, nice ethereal image, needs a bit of work. So I'm going to crop this image because that wire running across the top of the screen doesn't help, but also I think it actually benefits the picture by actually reducing the overall frame size so that the tree is larger in it. What I'm doing is desaturating it because I think it works better as a black and white picture, and I've also introduced a fair bit of dehaze to actually bring out a bit more contrast in the water and in the fog. And I'm now cloning out a whole load of bits and pieces all over the image which I don't like and don't sort of add to the balance of the picture, these odd bits of branch and so on and so forth. I'm being quite pernickety about removing these various bits. In fact, I get a little bit more aggressive in a couple of seconds because I actually take out one of those branches completely because I don't think it adds anything to the picture. It's breaking up the harmony of what's a nice image, I think. So we'll actually take the whole branch out now, I think, which is quite a fiddly thing to do, but if you get the source of the actual clone correct, it will look alright. So that's a lot cleaner as an image now, and I'm now going to actually put a dehaze effect on the bottom to actually bring out more detail in the surface of the water, which it's done quite nicely. And I'm now getting the black and white balance right so that they're not clipping and they're not sort of hidden. Also putting noise reduction up to actually take some of the grain away that was introduced and reintroducing a little bit more vignette on the picture. And the next thing I'm doing is actually painting the tree with a little bit more texture to actually make it stand out a little bit more. And then after that, the next thing is a little bit more recloning of some of the artifacts that have come in as a result of adding dehaze to the picture. And that's pretty much the image now. That's I think that's quite a pleasing image. A few more dust spots to remove, but there's the image. Enjoy this. The next image is from Geoff Crossley. I called it Contemplative Girl. She's obviously looking quite sad. It's apparently set at Christmas. Anyway, here we go. I've looked at this picture and realised there's an awful lot extra information on it. I know it sets the context, but I think it distracts from the actual natural appearance of the girl, who's just looking rather a little bit sad, probably thinking of something that she's not had at Christmas, who knows. And so I'm actually cropping in quite tightly on the image, and I'm putting her sort of eye and nose on the third line, and I'm just taking a little bit of the lower part of the frame away. And that's reduced the image quite significantly, and I'm now going to alter the levels and actually try to make the background a little less obtrusive. So I'm going to darken the background, and as part of doing that I'll be able to emphasize the girl a little more. We've taken the exposure down on the background, the highlights and various other parts of it, and darkened it a bit more. And now I'm going to actually work on bringing some of the detail out on the girl's hair, which is in too much shadow, and also the back of her coat and a few other parts of her clothing. So I'll just raise those. It's bringing a bit more detail out into her hair and everything, which I think looks a bit better. There's a fair bit of work to do on this. I'm also actually changing the sharpening and also introducing some noise reduction, and I'm about to what am I about to do? Yes, I think her eye, her right eye looks a little bit dark for some reason. I don't know quite why, so I'm just introducing a bit more light into that to balance it up a bit better, because it was just looking a little bit like someone had sort of hit her in the eye, but obviously hadn't. Anyway, what do you think? This next image is a macro shot from Brian Thomas. Well, it's not quite macro, it's pretty close though, but we'll treat it as that. Okay, so I think there's too much on the right hand side of this picture, so I'm going to crop it in. I'm just checking where the different focal points are, because it's obviously a very shallow depth of field image. So I'm cropping it in to a much smaller frame. keeping some of the yellow flowers, even though they're actually defocused on the right, because I think they add a bit of balance to the purpley coloured flower. And I've added a vignette to it to pull the eye closer into the flower, and I'm just modifying the light levels again, as seems to be common on all of these things. Take the saturation down fractionally and increase the vibrance a little bit, and yeah, it looks quite nice in the centre of the flower. And the next thing I'm doing is going to actually put a filter, radial filter, or not quite radial in this case, it's more an oval, but I'm going to take a little bit of saturation out of part of the outside of the image and increase the clarity slightly, and also bring the highlights up a tiny smidgen. And that makes the image pop quite a bit more, I think, altering the white slightly and bringing the balance back on the lights. We seem to be cropping or clipping on both ends of the histogram, so I'll work on that. That's the end of those edits. Thank you very much for the guys that submitted the images, and I'm going to leave you with the images, the before and afters, cycling through towards the end of the video. Thank you very much.